My fiancé, Ethan, loved to tease me about my job as a waitress, calling it a career with no future. He had absolutely no clue that I was the owner of the five-star restaurant where he entertained clients every week, or that the coveted corner table he always requested was reserved under my name. The night I decided to personally serve him, handing him a notice of a lifetime ban along with the bill and a summary of my net worth, his arrogance just shattered. As for the engagement ring he had given me, I gifted it to a nonprofit. "You are just a waitress, but you have got so much talent." Ethan's words spin in my head as I stand before him, the dinner check in one hand and the official ownership documents in the other. The look of utter shock washing over his face is worth every single second I spent hiding in plain sight. I was not always the woman running Lumina. 7 years ago, I was just Mia Sterling, fresh out of culinary school, with dreams as big as my student loan debt. My grandmother's diner, Betty's Place, was on its last legs, a cozy relic in a neighborhood that was quickly gentrifying with chic cafes and fusion spots. When she passed away and left me the struggling little place, my old classmates called it a lost cause. I called it my chance. If you are enjoying this story about a woman who flipped the script on her judgmental fiancé, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It is totally free, and you will get more empowering stories just like this one. Now, let us get back to what happened. That first year almost destroyed me. I was pulling 18-hour days, draining my life savings to buy new kitchen equipment, and learning the hard way that cooking school teaches you nothing about payroll taxes or health code regulations. To save money on rent, I slept on a little cot in the back storage room, and I would shower at the 24-hour gym down the block before I opened up for the breakfast rush. In those tough months, I did every job imaginable: dishwasher, line cook, server, hostess. You could say necessity was my greatest mentor. By year 3, Betty's Place had been reborn as Lumina, a restaurant serving upscale comfort food that started pulling in food bloggers and Chicago locals. I still remember my hands shaking when I read the first major review that called us Chicago's best-kept secret. 6 months after that, we got our first Michelin star. The second one came just last year. Success changed almost everything, except for my Tuesday nights. Even though my executive chef, Chloe, runs the kitchen and my general manager, Marcus, handles the front of house, I still put on a simple black uniform, tie my hair back, and wait tables. At first, my staff thought I was just micromanaging them, but now they get it. It is my way of staying connected to my roots, to my perspective, and to the high standards of service that we built our entire reputation on. The fact that the owner waits tables on Tuesdays became this little whispered secret among our regulars, a fun quirk that even got a mention in a profile by Chicago Magazine. I never confirmed it publicly, though. Most new guests have no idea who I am, and honestly, I like it that way. You learn so much about people when they think you are just their server. And that is exactly how I met Ethan. It was a rainy Friday, which was not even my usual night, but I was covering a shift for Sarah because her kid's babysitter canceled last minute. He was sitting by himself at the bar, his suit perfectly tailored, scrolling on his phone with one hand and sipping a Manhattan with the other. "Another one?" I asked, my notepad out. When he looked up, it was one of those moments you read about in romance novels but never think actually happens. His whole face changed when he smiled, and it reached his eyes in a way that felt completely real, not practiced. "Only if you will give me your dinner recommendation," he countered. "I have been staring at this menu for 10 minutes, and I am totally overwhelmed." I suggested the duck confit. It was technically my grandmother's recipe, but we had modernized it with a cherry reduction sauce that took 12 hours to make. "I trust a woman who makes a confident recommendation," he said, and ordered exactly what I had suggested. Later, when he could not stop talking about how amazing the meal was, I felt this dual sense of pride, both as a chef and as a server. It was a feeling only I could truly understand. Ethan came back the next week, and he asked to be seated in my section. And he came back the week after that, too. Soon enough, His Friday night visits were so consistent that the other servers just automatically pointed him toward my tables. He would show up at 7, the stress of his investment banking job written all over his face. But he would leave looking completely relaxed, lingering over his dessert and asking me thoughtful questions about my day. What started as just having coffee after my shift turned into real dates. We took walks along the Chicago River, went to a jazz show at the Green Mill, and had dinner at rival restaurants where I would be secretly taking mental notes while he thought I was just enjoying the food. He would talk about his work, about the massive deals he helped finance, and the pride he felt seeing skyscrapers rise from the contracts he had negotiated. "And what about you?" he would ask. "What brought you to waitressing?" Every time, I would answer with half-truths. I told him about my culinary background, how much I loved the restaurant world, and my special connection to Lumina. I never actually lied. I just let him draw his own conclusions, and I watched his reactions very, very carefully. Other guys I had dated showed their true colors pretty fast when they found out I just waited tables. Some saw me as a project, someone to be rescued. Others saw me as conveniently unambitious, someone who would never outshine their own success. But Ethan, at first, he seemed different. He seemed genuinely interested in my opinions, no matter where they came from, and he was respectful of the service industry in a way that felt like it was part of his character, not just an act. About 3 months into our relationship, I saw something that made me hesitate. Ethan had brought some colleagues to Lumina, and they were seated in Marcus's section while I was working across the dining room. I was watching out of the corner of my eye when a new server, who had only been on the job for 2 weeks, accidentally mixed up their appetizer order. Is not the management screening these people at all? Ethan's voice was just loud enough for me to hear the dismissive tone. This is why they will always be replacing names on their name tags. His friends all laughed. The server, a single mom who was studying to become a nurse, just blinked really fast, trying to hold back her tears. I almost told him everything that night. We were back at his high-rise apartment, with the city lights sparkling behind the floor-to-ceiling windows, and he started talking about an upcoming client dinner. "I really need to impress these investors," he said. "I was thinking Lumina. Your boss clearly runs a tight ship. Well, except for that one server." The words just got stuck in my throat. Instead, I just looked at him from across the kitchen island and wondered if his respect for me was conditional. I wondered if knowing who I really was would completely change how he saw me as a person. That question started to haunt me, even as our relationship got more serious. The next week, while he was sitting at my reserved corner table without knowing its significance, Ethan closed a huge deal. I watched it all happen from the kitchen pass. His confidence was undeniable. His treatment of the staff was not. With every visit, I started keeping a mental scorecard, judging his character while trying to protect my own heart from getting too invested. I told myself I was just waiting for the right time to tell him I was the owner. But the truth was, I was testing him. It was a test I desperately wanted him to pass, even as the evidence against him started to pile up. As spring turned into summer, my relationship with Ethan grew more intense, and so did my lie. 6 months in, we had fallen into a comfortable routine, but it required some seriously complicated scheduling on my part. I would spend my mornings in meetings with suppliers, my afternoons working on menu development, and my evenings were either spent in Ethan's arms or managing the dinner service from behind the scenes. That is, except for the nights he was actually dining at Lumina, thinking I was just another waitress clocking in for a shift. "You work way too hard for what they pay you," Ethan would say, kissing my forehead when I would come home claiming to be exhausted from a busy night of serving, when in reality I had been in my office going over our quarterly financials. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. But as the weeks went on, it felt harder and harder to find the right moment to tell him the truth. During those months, I learned more about Ethan's world. He was the youngest partner at a prestigious Chicago investment firm. He'd gone to law school at Yale, and his parents had a summer home in Lake Geneva where they entertained senators and CEOs. He came from a world of legacy and inherited connections, a world of old money that opened doors I had to kick down with nothing but grit. My father always told me that success is about positioning yourself next to power, he said to me one evening as we were sharing a bottle of wine on his balcony. That is why I just do not get people who stay in dead-end jobs. There's always a ladder to climb if you are just willing to look up. I had to bite my tongue. I thought about my dishwasher, Jose, who was working 3 jobs just to send his daughter to college. His idea of success had nothing to do with being close to power and everything to do with love and sacrifice. Maybe some people just find fulfillment in different ways, I suggested carefully. Ethan squeezed my hand. That is what I love about you, Mia. You always see the best in people. But trust me, nobody dreams of serving other people their whole life. If only he knew that my serving other people had built a multi-million-dollar business that was now expanding to a second location. The construction updates for the new place would pop up on my personal phone, which I had to guard very carefully whenever he was around. Despite these little disconnects, there were also so many moments of real connection. Ethan had this deep, full-bodied laugh that always seemed to catch even him by surprise. And it became my favorite sound. He remembered the little things, like how I preferred tulips to roses, or how thunderstorms made me anxious, or that I hated the texture of coconut. On Sunday mornings, he would bring me coffee in bed and read parts of the newspaper out loud, and his commentary would make me laugh so hard my sides ached. Imagine us doing this in Rome, he would say. Or, next year, we could be waking up to this view in Kyoto. Our shared bucket list just kept getting longer. When he talked about the future, I let myself believe that we could somehow bridge the gap between our 2 worlds. Then came the night Ethan finally met my manager, Marcus, properly. I had talked about Marcus so much that Ethan suggested we all have dinner at Lumina so they could chat after my shift. Marcus, who had been with me since we barely survived that first year together, knew exactly how to play his part while secretly enjoying the whole situation. The restaurant business is all about illusion, really, Ethan declared after his second scotch, while I pretended to be off duty, sitting with them in my regular clothes. Customers think they are paying for the food, but what they are really paying for is the experience, the status of getting a reservation. Marcus caught my eye, and I could see the corner of his mouth twitch. And what do you think is the most important part of managing that illusion? He asked. Strong leadership, obviously, Ethan went on, getting excited about his topic. The problem with most restaurants is that the owners are completely disconnected from the day-to-day. If I owned a place like Lumina, I would have performance metrics for every single position. This industry just accepts way too much mediocrity. Marcus kind of choked on his drink. Fascinating perspective. Any other brilliant insights into our little world? I shot Marcus a look, a warning to back off as Ethan launched into this detailed critique of restaurant profit margins and labor costs, quoting statistics that were actually several years out of date. The inside joke between us felt like it was stretched as tight as a wire. Mia here has excellent instincts, Marcus said finally, gently changing the subject. She understands this business better than most of the owners I have ever worked for. Ethan just smiled indulgently and put his hand on top of mine. Oh, she is definitely exceptional, though I keep telling her she could be using those instincts in a field with some actual career advancement. His words stung, way more than they should have, especially with Marcus sitting right there. Later that night, after both of them had left, I sat alone in my real office and seriously considered just ending the whole charade. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was fear, or maybe it was the unsettling feeling that I still did not know which version of me Ethan had actually fallen in love with. 2 weeks later, on a perfect fall evening, Ethan suggested a walk along the lakefront. The October air was crisp, and the golden light of the approaching sunset softened the edges of the city. He seemed strangely quiet, and he kept checking his watch as he led me towards a specific spot overlooking the water. This is where my grandparents first met, he said suddenly. My grandfather was shipping out to Europe for the war, and my grandmother came here to say goodbye, not knowing if she would ever see him again. Before I could even say anything, he was down on one knee. He had a small velvet box in his hand, and when he opened it, the setting sun hit the diamond inside, and it just exploded with light. The ring was gorgeous, a vintage-style piece with a center stone that seemed to capture all the fire of the dying day. Mia Sterling, you have brought something into my life that I did not even know was missing. Your kindness, your grace, your unwavering support of my ambitions. You make me want to be a better man every single day. His voice had that rare vulnerability that always broke down my defenses. Will you marry me? Time just seemed to stop as all these conflicting emotions crashed into me. There was joy at the sincerity in his eyes, pride in how far we had come since we first met, and a whole lot of anxiety about the huge secret that was still standing between us. And underneath all of it was that nagging question: did he love me? Or did he love the version of me he thought I was? Yes, I heard myself say, as tears blurred my vision and he slipped the ring onto my finger. The weight of it felt both right and wrong at the same time, like a key that almost fit the lock. As he pulled me into a hug, with the city lights starting to twinkle around us, I made a silent vow. Before we set a wedding date, Ethan was going to know everything. The question that kept me up as we celebrated that night was not whether he would be impressed by my success, but whether he would forgive me for lying by omission, and whether the woman he wanted to marry would even exist in his mind once the waitress disguise was finally gone. The diamond on my left hand glittered in the morning sun as I packed my things into labeled boxes. Ethan had insisted that I move into his Gold Coast condominium. No fiancé of mine is going to live in that tiny apartment in Wicker Park, he had said, and after weeks of him gently pushing, I had finally given in. What I could not tell him was that the tiny apartment was a convenient lie. My real home was a brownstone in Lincoln Park that I had bought with cash after we earned our second Michelin star. Moving day turned into a carefully orchestrated performance. I moved my clothes, books, and a few personal items from the rarely used apartment, telling Ethan that my unpredictable hours at the restaurant made it impossible for him to help. The reality was I was secretly moving all my financial documents, business plans, and the mementos that told the real story of my success into a new storage unit. Finally, Ethan whispered that first night, pulling me close as we stood on his, now our balcony. Having you here makes this place finally feel like a home. His sincerity was like a punch to the gut. Every real moment we shared was built on a foundation of lies, a beautiful house on shaky ground. My new living situation made my already complicated life even more of a mess. I would sneak out most mornings while Ethan was in the shower, claiming I had an early breakfast shift when I was actually heading to management meetings or negotiating with suppliers. In the afternoons, I had to carefully coordinate with Marcus and my assistant to make sure all my calls were screened and my messages were kept private. When I came home to the condo at night, I often had to explain away the smell of kitchen spices that clung to my hair, even after I'd changed out of my chef's whites and into my waitress uniform before heading home. Your dedication to that place is admirable, even if it is a bit misplaced, Ethan said one evening when I got home, completely drained after a 16-hour day that involved both actual serving and secret management tasks. But honestly, at some point, you need to think about your future, our future. The first real cracks in our relationship started to show about 3 weeks after I moved in. Ethan's firm was hosting a big charity gala, and he spent days dropping hints about what I should wear and how I should act. Just follow my lead with the senior partners, he advised as he adjusted his bow tie. They can be a little traditional about their wives' roles. I am not their wife, I pointed out, smoothing down the simple black dress I had chosen. It was coincidentally similar to my waitstaff uniform, just a lot more expensive. And I am not yours yet, either. Ethan's smile did not quite reach his eyes. But you will be. And in my world, Mia, first impressions matter. His world. As if mine did not even exist. At the gala, surrounded by Chicago's high society in a ballroom dripping with crystals, I recognized several of my regular customers, including the food critic who had written Lumina's first glowing review. I quickly turned my body away, thankful that I had worn my hair differently than I usually did for work. "And what do you do, my dear?" asked the silver-haired wife of Ethan's managing partner. Before I could even open my mouth, Ethan's arm tightened around my waist. "Mia is a waitress for now," he jumped in smoothly, "at Lumina, downtown. Funny coincidence with the name, is not it? Just a waitress." The words felt like tiny, sharp cuts. "How quaint," the woman replied, with a look on her face like she had just stepped in something. "And do you have plans for something more substantial?" Ethan answered for me again. "We are exploring some options at the firm, maybe something in client relations." Later, in the cab ride home, the silence between us was so tense I could barely breathe. I finally broke it. "You answered for me twice back there." "I was helping," Ethan said, already scrolling through emails on his phone. "Those people can be really judgmental about waitresses." He sighed and took my hand. "Sweetheart, you know I do not care about your job. I make more than enough for both of us. I just do not want you to feel uncomfortable in those situations." "I did not feel uncomfortable until you spoke for me," I said. The argument just fizzled out without any resolution, and it was the first of many. Little comments started piling up like snowflakes, light on their own but quickly building into an avalanche. Ethan would suggest I look into secretarial courses. He would mention a colleague's wife who used to be a barista before she found her true calling in event planning. He started leaving brochures for professional image consultants on the kitchen counter. My silent refusal to engage only made him try harder. I started finding job listings circled in red pen on the counter, positions for administrative assistants, receptionists, retail associates, things that required no experience or education. "I am not ashamed of being a waitress," I told him after finding yet another circled ad. "Of course not," he replied, kissing my forehead. "It is admirable how you have stuck with it. I just think you are capable of so much more." The irony was so bitter it burned. Chloe, my head chef and my best friend since culinary school, was the only person I could talk to. We would have our meetings, which were really just therapy sessions for me, disguised as coffee dates to Ethan. She saw how much my anxiety was growing. "This is insane, Mia," she said one night, chopping herbs with a scary amount of force in my restaurant kitchen after hours. "You are running one of the most successful restaurants in Chicago while pretending to be Cinderella before the ball. For what? For a guy who thinks waiting tables is beneath him?" "It is complicated," I insisted, tasting her newest sauce. "He has good qualities. He is driven, he is smart, he is caring when it counts." "Caring when it is convenient," she corrected me. "What do you think is going to happen when he finds out the truth? Do you really think his ego can handle knowing that his little waitress has been his boss this whole time?" Guys like Ethan do not just magically develop respect for things they have openly looked down on. Her words stuck with me for days, and they were amplified by Ethan's constant suggestions about my career. The engagement ring started to feel heavier every day, and I knew the deadline for telling the truth was getting closer as Ethan started talking about wedding venues and dates. Then came the night I almost told him everything. I had it all prepared. Financial statements showing my success, press clippings about the restaurant, even the keys to my real home in Lincoln Park. I had cooked his favorite meal, ironically, a recipe from Lumina, and opened a special bottle of wine we had been saving. "I need to tell you something really important," I started, just as we were finishing dinner. "But you go first." The genuine excitement in his eyes made me pause. "Actually, you go ahead. I got the promotion." He practically jumped out of his chair. Senior partner effective immediately, the youngest in the firm's history. He pulled me up into a spinning hug, and his joy was so infectious that it almost made me forget my own turmoil. "And do you know what this means? A huge raise, a corner office, and..." He paused for dramatic effect. "You can finally quit that waitressing job." He kept going, completely missing the fact that my face had frozen. No more late nights. No more serving other people. You can focus on planning our wedding, on setting up our home properly. He held my face in his hands. I told you I would take care of everything, did not I? I forced a smile. The folder with all my revelations was burning a hole in my desk drawer, where I had quickly hidden it before dinner. Congratulations. I am so proud of you. That night, as Ethan slept soundly next to me, I just stared at the ceiling. Chloe's warning echoed in my mind. The truth was not going to set me free. Not yet. First, I needed to understand exactly what would happen when Ethan's whole perception of me was shattered, when the power dynamic he had so carefully constructed was completely flipped upside down. The decision was made in the quiet darkness before dawn. I would reveal everything, but it would be on my terms, with witnesses who would make sure the truth could not be twisted or rewritten later. Ethan had shown me who he was in 100 small moments. Now, it was my turn to show him who I really was. My big reveal would have to wait for the perfect moment. In the meantime, Ethan's promotion just fueled his ego and made him show up at my restaurant even more. What used to be occasional Friday dinners turned into multiple visits a week as he entertained clients, celebrated deals with his colleagues, and made sure he was seen as a regular that the staff had to recognize. "I want to reserve our special table again," he would say on the phone calls that I now made a point of intercepting myself. It was almost funny. The corner booth with the best view of the city, the one he had loved since our first dates, was technically permanently reserved under Sterling, owner in our system. "Of course, Mr. Croft," I would reply, my voice perfectly professional. "We will have your usual table waiting for you." He never once wondered how he always managed to get the most sought-after table in the restaurant, even on nights when our wait list was weeks long. He was too busy enjoying the feeling of exclusivity to be curious about why that particular table was always mysteriously available for him. Dealing with Ethan's frequent visits required some serious coordination. I worked with Marcus to make sure I only waited on Ethan's table every third or fourth time he came in. It was enough to keep up the pretense of our relationship, but not so often that it would interfere with my actual management duties or make him suspicious. "He is here again," Chloe would text me from the kitchen. It was our private signal. Depending on our pre-planned schedule, I would either put on my waitress uniform or hide out in my office. On the nights I was not serving him, I would watch him from different spots, pretending to review the wine list with the sommelier, discussing menu changes with the maitre d', or just acting like I was dining alone at the bar. These different perspectives gave me some pretty revealing insights into who Ethan really was. When he was with important clients, he was the definition of charming. He was attentive, showered them with compliments, and ordered expensive bottles of wine. With his colleagues, who were at his level or higher, he was easygoing and friendly, laughing at their jokes while subtly dropping hints about his own achievements. But with junior associates or support staff, a totally different Ethan would appear. He was impatient, dismissive, and seemed to measure their worth by how quickly they could anticipate his needs. The most telling moment, though, was how he treated my staff. Ethan's pleas and thank you were always there for senior servers like Marcus and Isabella, but they completely disappeared for food runners and busboys. For newer staff, his politeness depended entirely on how well they performed. The incident with Tyler was what really solidified everything for me. Tyler was a 19-year-old kid, working to pay for his community college classes. He was earnest and eager, but still learning the ropes of fine dining. It was only his second week when he was assigned to help out at Ethan's table during a lunch with 3 potential clients. I was in the kitchen going over invoices when I heard a commotion. There was a crash, followed by a raised voice. When I stepped out into the dining room, I saw Tyler frozen in terror, a water pitcher clutched in his shaking hands. Ethan's associate was frantically trying to blot his suit sleeve with a napkin. "Is this how you run your establishment?" Ethan's voice boomed across the now silent dining room as he addressed Marcus. Hiring incompetent children who cannot even pour a glass of water? Tyler's face turned bright red. Sir, I am so sorry. I do not want your apology, Ethan snapped, cutting him off with a wave of his hand. I want you gone. This suit costs more than you make in a month. I started to move toward them, my manager instincts taking over, but Marcus caught my eye and gave me a slight shake of his head, reminding me of our delicate situation. So I watched from behind a service column as Marcus handled it with his usual diplomacy. He offered sincere apologies, a complimentary lunch, and vouchers for their next visit. We will address this with the server immediately, Marcus assured them smoothly, while signaling for Tyler to go back to the kitchen. I followed him. He wants me fired, Tyler choked out, his eyes filling with tears. It was just an accident. My hand just slipped. I put a steady hand on his shoulder. You are not getting fired for an accident, Tyler. This is a learning experience, not a reason for termination. The relief that flooded his eyes made all this deception feel worth it. Later that day, when Ethan called to complain even more about that incompetent boy, I had to maintain my waitress persona while defending my own management decision to keep Tyler on staff. Marcus said he is giving him another chance, I explained, keeping my voice calm. Everyone deserves that, do they not? Not in business, Ethan replied flatly. One mistake reflects poorly on everyone. If my associates think the restaurant tolerates incompetence, that reflects poorly on me for recommending it. His concern was not about the water on the suit or the brief disruption. It was all about his own image. It was another hairline crack in the already shattering picture I had of our relationship. As the weeks went by, those cracks just got bigger. Ethan started complaining more and more about my schedule, especially when I had to cancel our plans for what I could only vaguely describe as restaurant emergencies. It is Tuesday night, he argued during one particularly tense phone call. A refrigeration unit had failed, and I needed to get there immediately. You've already worked a full day. Why cannot someone else handle a busy dinner service? It is complicated, I said, grabbing my keys. Tuesday nights are my responsibility. More important than our dinner with the Harringtons? They are only in town for one night, and Richard could be a huge client for me. I am sorry, but yes, this one time it is, I said. His expression hardened. I am starting to think you are not serious about our future, Mia. A waitress job should not be more important than your fiancé's career. The words hurt, even though I knew they were not accurate. I was choosing my career over his, just not the career he thought I had. These arguments became our new normal. His frustration grew with every canceled plan, every late night I came home, every morning I left before he was even awake. The engagement that once felt so full of promise now just hung between us like a question neither of us wanted to ask. The final crack came unexpectedly on a rare Sunday morning we had together. Ethan was in the shower when his phone started buzzing repeatedly on the nightstand. Normally, I would never invade his privacy, but the screen lit up with a name I recognized. Caleb, his best friend, and a frequent dinner guest at Lumina. The text preview showed just enough to catch my eye. Still cannot believe you are marrying the waitress. Bold move, man. I knew I should not look, but my finger was already typing in his password. My own birthday, a gesture that once seemed sweet, but now felt kind of controlling. The full message thread popped up, weeks of conversations laid out in damning blue bubbles. Marrying down keeps expectations manageable, Ethan had written just the day before. Plus, she is gorgeous and grateful for everything. It is a win-win. Classic savior complex, Caleb had replied with a laughing emoji, rescuing her from a life of serving others. She will make a perfect corporate wife once I polish off the rough edges, Ethan had written. Each message was a deeper cut than the last, confirming every single doubt I had tried to push away. The Ethan who spoke so gently to my face, who promised me partnership and respect, was a complete illusion. The real Ethan, the one who talked freely with his friends, saw our relationship as a power move, a project to be managed, not a partnership between equals. I put the phone back exactly where I had found it. My hands were surprisingly steady, considering the hurricane that was brewing inside me. By the time Ethan came out of the shower, I had arranged my face into a mask of normalcy and made an excuse about having to go pick up an extra shift. As I drove toward Lumina, my mind was racing, calculating a very different kind of shift that was about to happen. I finally admitted to myself what I had known for weeks. The big reveal I had been planning could not just be a gentle unveiling of the truth anymore. It needed to be a reckoning. It needed to force Ethan to confront not just my deception, but his own. The text messages haunted me all week, and they tainted every single interaction I had with Ethan. I found myself searching his face for any hint of the condescension he had shown to Caleb, analyzing every compliment for a hidden layer of patronization. Even though nothing had technically changed between us, everything felt different. It was like a filter had been removed, revealing harsh, unflattering light where I had once seen a warm, inviting glow. I probably would have confronted him right then and there if it had not been for the big Sunday dinner at his parents' suburban estate. Ethan had been planning this meeting for weeks, dropping hints about how important it was and coaching me on what to talk about. "Just be yourself," he had said, and then immediately followed it up with, "But maybe do not talk too much about the restaurant." Another time, he said, "My mother really appreciates people who dress with understated elegance." And later, "My dad respects ambition, so you should focus on your goals, not your current situation." By Sunday morning, I felt like an actress who had been given a dozen conflicting scripts. Standing in front of our closet, well, his closet, where my clothes took up a carefully measured 1/3 of the space, I picked out a simple navy dress that screamed understated elegance. "Perfect," Ethan approved, adjusting his tie in the mirror next to me. "Conservative, but not boring. Dad will appreciate that." The drive to Lake Forest took about 40 minutes, and with every mile, Ethan's nervous energy just grew. He quizzed me on his parents' accomplishments, his father's law firm that he had built from the ground up, his mother's position as the chair of 3 different charitable boards. He told me their preferences: Bordeaux wines, conservative politics, and traditional gender roles, and their expectations: grandchildren within 2 years, all holidays at their estate, and the continuation of family traditions I did not even know existed. "Remember," he said as we turned onto a long, tree-lined driveway, "first impressions are everything to them." The Croft estate was a massive colonial revival mansion that looked like it belonged in a historical documentary. As we stood at the huge mahogany front door, Ethan squeezed my hand so tightly it actually hurt. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, but I felt anything but ready. The door swung open before he could even knock. A uniformed housekeeper led us through a marble-floored foyer and into a formal living room where the elder Crofts were waiting. Eleanor Croft stood up first. She was a slender woman in her 60s with perfectly coiffed silver hair and the same sharp blue eyes as her son. "Ethan, darling," she said, accepting his kiss on her cheek before her assessing gaze fell on me. "And you must be Mia." Her handshake was quick, and her smile did not reach her eyes. Behind her, Arthur Croft stayed seated, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He just nodded in our direction. "Sit down, son," he said, pointing to the sofa across from him. "Tell me about the Harrington deal. Did they sign? No hello for me, no nice to meet you. Just business. Immediate and exclusive." Ethan jumped right into the details of the deal while I sat uncomfortably beside him, feeling Eleanor's eyes cataloging my every detail. When another housekeeper came in with drinks, Ethan automatically ordered for me. "White wine for my fiancé," he told the woman. "She prefers something sweet." I did not, actually. I preferred complex, earthy red wines, a preference I had developed over years of tastings with suppliers and sommeliers. But it seemed petty to contradict him right then, so I just accepted the overly sweet Riesling with a polite smile. "Ethan tells us you work at Lumina," Eleanor finally said to me when there was a lull in the men's business talk. Such a coincidence, with your name. Yes, it has become a bit of a running joke with the staff, I replied. The half-truth came easily after months of practice. Waiting tables, is it? Arthur asked, his gaze sharpening. Temporarily, I assume. Dad. Ethan interjected with a nervous laugh. Not everyone follows a traditional career path. Clearly, Arthur replied, and that one word was dripping with judgment. But surely there are plans for something more appropriate. He aimed this question at Ethan, not at me, as if I was not even capable of answering for myself. We've discussed several options, Ethan answered smoothly. Client relations at the firm, maybe, or event coordination. Mia has excellent people skills. I actually enjoy the restaurant industry, I said quietly, my voice surprisingly steady. I find it fulfilling. Eleanor and Arthur exchanged a look that was so full of meaning it was practically a conversation. Disappointment, concern, judgment, it was all there. Well, Eleanor said with a forced brightness, being a waitress certainly teaches valuable skills. Organization, patience with difficult people, following instructions precisely. It sounded like she was describing a well-trained dog. Ethan mentioned you went to culinary school, Arthur pressed, yet you are serving food instead of making it. Before I could answer, dinner was announced. Throughout the elaborate four-course meal, which was perfectly prepared by their private chef, the interrogation continued under the thin veil of polite conversation. Did I have a trust fund? No. Had I considered finishing my bachelor's degree? I had, along with the MBA I had completed 3 years ago. What were my thoughts on having children and the importance of being a present mother during their formative years? It was a thinly veiled jab at my work hours. With every question, Ethan would jump in to rephrase my answers, editing my life story in real time to make it more acceptable to his parents. By the time dessert came, I barely recognized the woman they were talking about, this simplified, aspirational version of Mia, who just needed the right guidance to become a proper Croft wife. You have potential, Arthur told me directly as we were getting ready to leave. The statement was clearly intended as a compliment, but it landed like an insult. With Ethan's guidance and the right connections, you could find a much more suitable position. Our family has standards to maintain. The car was silent until we were off the estate's property. Then, Ethan let out a loud sigh and loosened his tie. That went better than I expected, he said, completely oblivious to my simmering rage. Dad actually said you have potential. That is high praise coming from him. Potential for what, exactly? To grow beyond my embarrassing job and become suitable for your family? Ethan's knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. They are old-fashioned, Mia. You knew that. And frankly, you could have tried a little harder to highlight your strengths instead of bringing up the restaurant every 2 minutes. I was answering their questions honestly. Should I have lied? You should have emphasized your ambitions beyond serving food, he snapped, his carefully constructed mask finally cracking. They are worried about how you will fit into our social circle. My dad's colleagues' wives run charities. They manage foundations. They support their husbands' careers. They do not work nights and weekends carrying plates. So, I am an embarrassment. You are making this unnecessarily difficult, Ethan said, his voice taking on that same patronizing tone he had used with Tyler after the water incident. I'm trying to help you see the bigger picture. My world has certain expectations, and if we are going to build a life together, you need to aim higher. I am doing you a favor by marrying someone with your limited prospects. The least you could do is show some willingness to adapt. And there it was. The ugly truth I had seen in his text messages, now spoken out loud. The rest of the drive was spent in a frigid silence. Ethan would occasionally let out a dramatic sigh, as if I were the one being unreasonable. When we got home, he disappeared into his office and shut the door firmly. I stood on the balcony twisting the diamond ring that now felt more like a brand of ownership than a symbol of partnership. Each facet caught the city lights and reminded me of a different lie, a different compromise, a different piece of myself I had let him diminish. Later that night, I lay awake next to Ethan's sleeping form, staring at the ceiling as a wave of clarity washed over me. This whole charade had gone on for far too long. It was not just damaging our relationship, it was damaging my own self-respect. I had built a restaurant empire on the principles of honesty, quality, and respect for everyone, from the dishwashers to the diners. And yet, I had let myself get tangled up with a man who embodied none of those values. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more silent acceptance. As the dawn broke over Chicago, painting the sky with shades of new possibilities, I slipped out of bed and made a phone call. "Marcus, it is me. I need you to make some changes to Thursday's reservations. Ethan is bringing some important clients. I want everything to be perfect." "The usual table?" he asked. "Yes," I confirmed, a plan forming with crystal clear precision in my mind. "But this time, I will be his server. And nothing goes wrong until I decide it does." The 4 days between that early morning decision and Thursday night passed with a strange sense of calm. I moved through the condo like a ghost, managing to avoid Ethan without making it obvious. I was out the door early for shifts at the restaurant and came home late after reviewing inventory. He barely even noticed. He was completely consumed with preparing for what he kept calling the meeting that will define my career. On Tuesday afternoon, his call came through on my private line, the one that was supposed to be for actual restaurant business. "Reservation for Thursday at 7, he said without any introduction, not recognizing my professional phone voice. "Ethan Croft, party of 4. I need the corner table." "Of course, Mr. Croft," I replied, my tone perfectly even. Marcus was standing nearby looking over staffing schedules, and I motioned for him to listen in. "May I ask the occasion?" "A meeting with Japanese investors," he said, the pride obvious in his voice. "A 7-figure potential deal. Everything has to be perfect. Have wine recommendations ready, no delays between courses, and I want your best server. I will personally ensure that everything meets your standards," I promised. And the double meaning made Marcus raise his eyebrows. Perfect. And Mia? I froze for a second before I realized he thought he was talking to a reservations manager who just happened to share my name. My fiancé. She sometimes waits tables there. If she is working on Thursday, please make sure she is nowhere near our section. It would be awkward. My fingers tightened around the pen I was holding. "I understand completely, sir. We will make the appropriate arrangements." After I hung up, I looked at Marcus's concerned face. "You heard?" He nodded slowly, every word. "Are you sure about this, Mia?" "I have never been more certain of anything in my life," I replied, and I was surprised by how steady my own voice sounded. "Call a staff meeting for tomorrow morning. Essential personnel only." The meeting on Wednesday included only the people I trusted completely: Marcus, Chloe, my sommelier Oliver, and the senior servers who had been with me from the very beginning. As I explained the situation and laid out my plan, their expressions went from shock to a kind of vengeful excitement. "He does not deserve you," Chloe said flatly when I was done. "He never did." "This is not about what he deserves," I corrected her. "This is about me finally standing in my own truth after hiding for way too long. No drama, no big public scene, just the facts and the consequences." We spent the next 2 hours planning every single detail, the exact timing of each course, who would be serving the surrounding tables, and the precise moment I would make my appearance. Oliver selected wines that were specifically chosen to complement not just the food, but also the rising tension of the evening. "The letter?" Marcus asked quietly as the meeting was wrapping up. I had already written it. It was a simple, dignified statement revoking Ethan's dining privileges at Lumina, explaining that our restaurant was built on a foundation of respect for everyone, regardless of their position, and that his consistent mistreatment of our staff violated our core values. There was no emotional language, no accusations, just a clear boundary. "It is ready," I told him. along with all the paperwork documenting my ownership, the awards, and the financial statements. Everything will be in the check presenter when the time comes. Thursday came with the crystal clear perfection of an early autumn day. I spent the day preparing methodically. I did a final review of the special menu with Chloe. I confirmed the investors' backgrounds with Oliver to make sure my wine knowledge was on point, and I even took a few minutes to meditate in my office to center myself. At 5 o'clock, I changed into what I was privately calling my revelation uniform. It was not the standard black outfit of our waitstaff, but a tailored dress in the same color. It was subtle enough to pass for a uniform, but it clearly signaled my actual position to anyone who was paying attention. I wore my grandmother's small gold watch, a little reminder of where I came from and the legacy I was protecting. Marcus found me in the staff room at 6:30, adjusting my hair in the mirror. They are 15 minutes out. Traffic on the expressway. He put a supportive hand on my shoulder and squeezed gently. "We are all with you." I just nodded, the emotion of the moment threatening to crack my composure for the first time all week. "Thank you for everything." At exactly 7 o'clock, Ethan swept through the front doors with 3 distinguished-looking Japanese businessmen in tow. From my spot near the kitchen, I watched Marcus greet them with his usual professional grace and lead them to the corner table. My table. The spectacular city view was made even more beautiful by the setting sun, painting the Chicago skyline in shades of gold and rose. I let them get settled. They ordered drinks, exchanged pleasantries, and looked over the menus. Through the kitchen pass, I watched Ethan in his element. He was commanding the table with his practiced charm, making a big show of how familiar he was with the restaurant, how confident he was in his wine selection, and casually mentioning how he came to this neighborhood gem at least once a week. At exactly the right moment, I stepped out from the shadows and approached their table with the calm, composed grace I had practiced since my culinary school days. Ethan saw me when I was about 3 steps away, and his expression went through a rapid series of changes. Confusion, then alarm, then a forced, casual smile. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice a little higher than usual. "This is actually my fiancé, Mia. She, works here." The executives all gave me polite little nods as I smiled professionally. "Good evening and welcome to Lumina," I said, making sure my focus was on all 4 men, not just Ethan. "I will be your server tonight. May I start you with some sparkling water for the table?" Ethan's laugh sounded strained. "Sweetheart, I did not realize you were working tonight. Does Isabella usually have this section?" "I wanted to personally ensure that everything was perfect for your important meeting," I replied smoothly as I poured the water with practiced precision. "Our chef has prepared several specials that I believe will impress your guests." What happened next was the most perfectly executed service of my entire career. I described each dish with an expert level of knowledge that no regular server could possibly have. I recommended wine pairings with the confidence of an owner, and I maintained a completely professional demeanor that gave nothing away, while secretly setting the stage for everything that was about to happen. Throughout the meal, Ethan's discomfort became more and more obvious. He would interrupt my descriptions of the food, he rushed through the wine selections, and he kept making little comments designed to put me in my place. "She is only doing this temporarily," he told the investors, during the appetizer course, with a pointed emphasis on the word temporarily that made my back stiffen. "Such dedication to service," the senior investor remarked, and he seemed genuinely more impressed than Ethan had intended. By the time the main course arrived, Ethan's patience was clearly wearing thin. When I came to the table to check on them, he cut me off in the middle of a sentence. "We are fine, Mia. I think the gentleman would prefer to discuss business without constant interruptions." "Of course," I replied coolly, "though as the owner, I find it valuable to ensure my guests are enjoying their experience." The word owner just hung in the air for a second before Ethan forced another laugh. "She means she owns the responsibility for her tables. English idioms can be confusing." The investors nodded politely, but I saw the sharp glances they exchanged. These were smart businessmen who could recognize a power dynamic shifting in real time. When dessert arrived, Ethan's frustration finally boiled over. As I was describing the deconstructed chocolate torte, a recipe that had gotten us a feature in Food Wine magazine, he cut me off harshly. "This is exactly why you need to quit this dead-end job," he hissed, momentarily forgetting who he was with. Hovering over tables, prattling on about food. It is embarrassing. The table went completely silent. The senior investor's eyes widened just slightly. I straightened my shoulders, feeling a profound sense of calm wash over me. "I will return shortly with your check, gentlemen." In the kitchen, Marcus handed me the prepared check presenter without saying a word. His eyes said everything I needed to know, both support and concern. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and walked back to the table. "Thank you for dining with us tonight," I said, placing the leather folder down precisely in front of Ethan. "Inside, you will find your bill, along with a letter regarding your future dining privileges at Lumina and some documentation that you might find informative." Ethan opened the folder, his confusion quickly turning to shock as he scanned the contents. "I should probably introduce myself properly," I continued, speaking directly to the investors. "I am Mia Sterling, the owner and founder of Lumina. I established this restaurant 7 years ago after graduating from the Culinary Institute of America, and we have since been honored with 2 Michelin stars and numerous industry awards." The senior investor's face completely transformed, showing a new level of respect and understanding. His colleagues murmured appreciatively. "Sterling San," he said, bowing his head slightly, "a most impressive establishment." "Thank you," I replied. Then I turned my gaze to Ethan, whose face had gone completely white. "Unfortunately, Mr. Croft will no longer be welcome here. His consistent disrespect toward our staff is a direct violation of our core values." I slid my engagement ring off my finger and placed it gently on the table next to the check presenter. "This belongs with you," I said quietly to Ethan, "as does your perception of me as someone who needs to be rescued. I wish you well, but not in my restaurant and not in my life." With that, I turned and walked away, my back straight, my steps confident. I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe even years. Behind me, I heard the senior investor say something in rapid Japanese, followed by the sound of chairs scraping. Whatever deal Ethan had been hoping to close that night was unraveling just as quickly as our relationship had. But unlike him, I felt nothing but relief as I watched it all fall apart. I did not look back as I walked through the dining room, past the curious faces of my staff and the oblivious diners. Marcus fell into step beside me as I reached the kitchen. "It is done," I said simply. Chloe abandoned her station at the pass and pulled me into a fierce hug that smelled like rosemary and redemption. "You okay?" "Surprisingly, yes," I said, and I was. The heavy weight of the lie had finally lifted, leaving behind a strange lightness that I had forgotten could even exist. "He is leaving," Oliver announced, appearing in the kitchen doorway. "He looks completely shell-shocked. The investors are staying. They asked to speak with the owner, if possible." I smoothed down my dress and squared my shoulders. "I will meet them in the private dining room. Oliver, bring a bottle of the Yamazaki 18. Hosting the Japanese executives afterward felt like the first truly authentic professional interaction I had in months. They were impressed by my business sense, fascinated by my journey from culinary school to Michelin stars, and respectfully curious about my plans for expansion. By the end of the evening, I had secured not only their respect, but also a potential investment in my second location. A remarkable recovery, the senior investor, Mr. Sato, said, as they were getting ready to leave. "The most impressive aspect of your business tonight." I did not have to ask what he meant. In business, just like in life, a person's true character is revealed in moments of chaos. The texts started coming in around midnight. They were frantic, disbelieving messages from Ethan, cycling through anger, pleading, and wounded pride. I read each one only once before silencing my phone. I slept more peacefully that night than I had in months. The next morning, a bouquet of tulips so massive it could barely fit through the door of my Lincoln Park brownstone arrived. This was the home Ethan never knew existed. The card was simple. "We need to talk, please." I donated the flowers to a nearby nursing home. Ethan showed up at the restaurant the next evening, even with the ban. He looked haggard and humbled in a way I had never seen before. 5 minutes, he begged when Marcus moved to escort him out. Just 5 minutes with her. I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. We met in my office, the space he never knew was there, hidden behind the simple door marked private. "This is..." He gestured helplessly at the tasteful decor, the wall filled with awards, the framed reviews. "I do not understand, Mia. Why did you not just tell me?" "I tried to, at first," I replied. I remained standing while he perched awkwardly on the edge of a visitor's chair. "But then I saw how you treated servers, how you talked about people who were trapped in service jobs, and I realized something important. You did not respect me as a waitress. Would you have even dated me if you had known the truth from the start?" "Of course I would have. You are successful, you are accomplished." "Exactly," I said. "You would have respected my accomplishments, not me as a person." That is the difference, Ethan. I wanted someone who valued people for who they are, regardless of their job title or their status. You failed that test over and over again. That is not fair. "I loved you," he protested, looking genuinely hurt. "You loved a projection," I said. "You loved a convenient fantasy of rescuing someone you thought was beneath you. You loved how I made you feel, not who I actually was. I can change, now that I understand." "That is the thing," I interrupted gently. "You should not have to change to treat people with basic dignity. That should be fundamental." His expression hardened just a little, and I saw a glimpse of the old Ethan. "This is about status for you, is not it? Some kind of twisted revenge because you felt judged." I just smiled sadly. "No, Ethan, it is about integrity. I hold my restaurant, my staff, and myself to the same standard. I will not compromise on that. Not for business, and not for love." He left without another word, the engagement ring still in his pocket, even though I had suggested he donate it to charity. I guess his pride could not handle that final act of submission. In the weeks that followed, he tried a few more times. There were emails outlining how we could start over, messages from mutual acquaintances suggesting I was being too harsh, and even a desperate call to Chloe, hoping she would intervene. Each attempt had less and less force behind it, like waves losing their power as they reached the shore. In the meantime, I started reclaiming the pieces of myself I had so carefully hidden away. I moved fully back into my own home, the space that truly reflected my taste and my achievements. I reconnected with industry colleagues I had been avoiding for fear of exposing my secret. I even gave an interview to Chicago Magazine about female entrepreneurship in the restaurant industry, finally stepping into the public role I had earned. The last attempt came about 6 weeks after that fateful dinner. Ethan showed up at a charity gala I was catering. It was a prestigious event where I had once hidden behind serving trays, but now I was attending as a featured culinary artist. "You look happy," he said, cornering me near the dessert display. The bitterness in his voice was gone, replaced by something that sounded more like resignation. "I am," I replied simply. "I sold the ring," he said after an awkward pause. "I donated the money to a scholarship fund for culinary students. I thought you would approve." I was genuinely surprised by the gesture. It suggested a level of growth I had not expected. That is, meaningful. "Thank you. I have been thinking about what you said, about respect being fundamental." He glanced around the gala, where servers were circulating with trays of my creations. I never really saw them before, the people behind the service. I'm trying to see them now. It was not exactly an apology, but it was maybe something more valuable. Evidence of reflection, the first step toward real change. "That is a good place to start," I acknowledged, not unkindly. We did not speak again that night or in the months that followed. Occasionally, I would hear things through the grapevine. Ethan had changed firms. He had moved to New York. He was dating someone new. Each little piece of information affected me less than the last, until they were just facts about a person I once knew, but no longer needed to keep track of. A year after we broke up, a small package arrived at the restaurant. Inside was a leather-bound journal that I recognized from a shop window we had passed on one of our early dates. The note was simple. "You were right. Keep building your empire. It is impressive as hell." E. I donated the journal to our culinary mentorship program, but I kept the note. It was not out of any lingering feeling for him, but as a reminder of the power that comes from standing firmly in your own truth, even when it is uncomfortable. Lumina expanded to 3 locations over the next few years. I kept my Tuesday tradition of waiting tables, though now it was publicized as part of our restaurant's philosophy instead of a secret. The corner booth, the one that was once reserved for Ethan, became dedicated to a rotating program that hosted culinary students, giving them a chance to experience fine dining that many of them could not otherwise afford. On some busy nights when every table is buzzing with conversation and every plate comes back to the kitchen empty, I sometimes pause in a quiet corner and just watch the beautiful dance of the service unfolding around me. In those moments, I am grateful for the painful lesson Ethan unintentionally taught me, that a life lived in compartments is a life diminished, and that hiding parts of yourself for someone else's comfort only leads to your own confinement. The engagement ring he took back that night has been replaced by something much more meaningful. It is a simple band that I bought for myself, engraved with my grandmother's favorite saying, "Serve with pride. Lead with grace." It is on my right hand, a daily reminder that I am whole and complete on my own, defined not by who I love or who loves me, but by the integrity with which I move through the world. Some people might see my story as a tale of revenge, a calculated gotcha moment designed to humiliate someone. But I know it was something else. It was never about bringing Ethan down. It was about, finally, after far too long, allowing myself to stand fully in my own power and refusing to be made small for anyone else's comfort or pride. That is not revenge. It is reclamation. The end of the story.